In the last video, I showed you how to make 3 different types of graphs using R. Now, the default functions for creating graphs in R are pretty good, but we can do even better if we use a package called ggplot2. ggplot2 is not by default installed in R, so we have to install it. We can do that using the install packages function, and called ggplot2. Notice that R will make some suggestions for us based on what we start typing. And then we can just execute this code and it'll install the package for us. We can also install packages using the bottom right pane. So click install here under packages tab. And we could type ggplot2. Again, it'll make some suggestions for us. And then click install. And so we can see in the console that it's installing the package ggplot2. I'm actually reinstalling it, so it went very quickly. Your download might actually take quite a bit of more time the first time that you install it. You only actually need to install it once. Okay, so for this tutorial, we're going to need the mass package, so make sure that your mass package is selected. And now we need to activate the ggplot, right? ggplot. All right, and make sure that that is also selected. If we try to execute command using ggplot2 and it hasn't been added to the library, then the code will not work. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to execute this first code. On line 43, ggplot is the function that we're going to be using. And then we have to identify where the data is going to be coming from. So it's coming again from cars 93. And then we have to identify what variable that we want to draw from that data frame. And so we want the variable of price. So the variable x is going to be on the x-axis. We're going to plot the variable price. AES is an argument here, and it stands for aesthetics. I don't know why they decided to use that, but anyway, you're going to need to use AES and then identify what variable that you want. Okay, so if I just execute this first line of code here on line 43, right? So we can see in our plot, what do we get? Not too much, right? So the reason is that we haven't actually told R what kind of a graph that we want to use. So we need another line of code. And the way that we do that is we put a plus sign at the end of line 43. And this tells R, okay, execute this. And then in addition, execute this command as well. And so we have a new function here. It's called geom for geometric object. And then specifically, we want a histogram, right? So that's how we tell R to use ggplot to create a histogram. All right, so now it's going to execute both 43 and 44. And here we go. So this is what our new histogram looks like. As you can tell, it's not all that attractive. And so what I would note is that now we actually have many arguments that we can add in order to control the look of the histogram, right? So instead of just using this code, I'm going to make it a note by putting a number sign. So now R is going to ignore this line. And instead, we're going to execute this line. So still the geom histogram, but now we've got some other options here. We're going to set the bin width to 5, meaning that the interval of each, or the width of each interval that's going to be in the histogram is going to be 5 units. In this case, $5,000. Color is going to be equal to black. Again, black has to be in quotation marks here. This refers to, or sets the border color of each column to black. And then fill determines the color of the bar. In this case, we want it to be red because histograms are typically red. All right, so now it's going to execute line 43 and line 45. And let's see what it looks like. All right, so already a big improvement. One thing I would note is that using the ggplot, it actually creates the histogram correctly. So if we go back to last activity and run the code to create a histogram, notice that the bins actually end at these benchmark numbers, right? So they start at 10, ends at 15, starts at 15, ends at 20. when really these bins should be centered over these benchmark values. So if we look at the one created by ggplot2, notice that the bin is actually centered over top of the 20, which is what it's supposed to look like. All right, but we can do even better. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to add another line of code by putting a plus sign. And so now it's going to also execute line number 46 here, which has the labels. So it's a labs is the function. And then we could say the X axis is going to have the following label, price in thousands of dollars. Y axis is going to have the following title, frequency, and then the title that we're going to give to the whole graph is going to be prices of cars sold in the USA in 1993. All right, so let's execute this code, see what it looks like. All right, so now we have our labels, frequency, price in thousands, and price of cars sold in the USA in 1993. All right, a couple things that we still want to fix here. We have this gray grid that we want to get rid of. And the way that we can do that is by using the themes function. So right here, the theme is black and white. That's what BW stands for. There are many different themes that we could select from. So if I backtrack a little bit here, and so now it's telling me these are all the different types of themes that I can choose from: classic, dark, gray, and so on and so forth. You can play with these if you like. Notice that they're all in ggplot2. That's where they're coming from. But we just want the black and white one. All right, so we need to add that code. So let's add a plus sign at the end here. And so now it's going to execute 43, 45, 46, and 47. All right, and now we see the gray background has disappeared, but we still have this weird grid that we want to get rid of. So the last line of code, code 48, or line 48 here, again, we're using the theme function, but now we're identifying the panel grid, right? That's what this is. It's a panel grid, and we're going to set it to blank, right? And so we just have to put a plus sign here and make sure that R is now going to execute 43, 45, 46, 47, and 48. And let's see what it looks like. Beautiful. Okay. Moving on to the next example here, I'm not going to go through all of the options. A lot of it is actually the same. So notice that line 50 is basically identical to line 43, except now we're using the type variable instead of price, right? Type is a categorical variable. And now we call the bar graph by using geom bar instead of geom histogram. Width here determines the width of the bars. We can set the color of the border of the bars, and then we can fill the bars with blue, adding some labels. Again, we're going to use our theme, our black and white theme, and remove the grids by using element blank. Okay, and let's just take a quick look here and see what it looks like. And there you go. All right, and finally, for the box plots, here, remember that we're using two variables, right? So we have an X variable and a Y variable. So the X variable, the one that's going to be plotted along the X axis, it's our independent variable is cylinders. And then the Y variable plotted on the Y axis, our dependent variable is going to be horsepower, right? So we just use a comma to separate the two. And now we're using geom box plot instead of bar or histogram. And again, we can set the color, the border of the boxes to be black, and I'm going to fill them with pink this time, just for a little fun. And labels, and again, we have our theme, black and white theme, and make the grid lines disappear. And I'm not going to include this line 61 yet, but let's take a look at what the box plot looks like. All right, so there's our box plot. And the nice thing about this last line of code, 61 geom point, so if we add that, now it's going to execute 56 through 61. Notice what happens. So what it's done is it's added all the individual data points and overlaid it over top of the box plot itself, which can sometimes be a nice feature. All right, so that concludes this video on graphing using ggplot.